Jingawana and welcome to Tales of the Tweed. My name is Arabella and I'm here with you every Wednesday morning at 10:30, and we have been travelling through the Aboriginal seasons all of the month of February. We spoke last week about the season of Warrigan, which is the season of winter. The week before that we covered Yaga, the season of Win. We started in the Bamtu, which was the season of the Bloodwoods. And we were continuing to talk about the season of Nungalgiri, which was the summer season, which is kind of extended quite a lengthy period of time in the Tweed this year. We've had a lot of wind, a lot of rain, a lot of cloud, a lot of lightning. So we are now into the final part of the Aboriginal calendar. Again, the beginning of the year starts with Nungalgiri, which is summer, where you're going to get a lot of muggara, lightning and thunderstorms, or chuggan. You then move into the season of Bamtu, which is the season of the Bloodwoods, which you see flowering all along the river. We moved in then to the season of the Yaga or Gwong, where you see late May, beginning early April and ends in late May. And then of course moved into the Warrigan season, which begins in June and ends late July. Coming out of the winter period, we then move into a season of Kachu, which is really a pre-spring season. It really starts to begin and transition around September, a time when the weather starts to warm up. Dry winds or drier winds, and winds can be strong. It's the first hint of the northerly winds. So when you start to feel the northerly, then you know it's actually the slight shift into what is the pre-spring. A lot of more birds start to sing, build nests, turtles and echidnas start moving around and start to become fat for the eating. Old people have always said don't eat the first echidna after winter, and that's kind of a tradition that Aboriginal folks still kind of follow. So not to eat the first of a food or a food flow, so not to eat the first of a catch, even with the Gwong, so where you've got sea mullet. It's not our tradition to take the young sea mullet that first come along the coast. Sea mullet actually have a very interesting pattern. They do 2 scoops of really deep waters before they come in and are caught, but traditionally you would always let the first lot go or run through, so that you're actually not taking the juveniles, you're really eating the young adults who have already transitioned and had 2 loops out to deep waters. And that tradition is really about effective sustainability, so that you're not overeating and you're not eating immature food, so that it hasn't had time to mate and then of course continue the cycle. So that's really interesting that in that season, as always, this kind of hint and old lessons about echidnas are similar, which is don't eat the first one, you let them get a bit fatter, etc. Of course, it's the right time to take advantage of the low spring tides to explore the reefs, which offer a lot of jalam, which is the word for fish, such as snapper, or mogum, which is our word for sea perch. Shellfish on the reef are also fat. A walk through the mangrove can be very rewarding at this time of the year, because you'll get kinyangara. Kinyangara is our oyster, or the word for oyster. And of course, you'll start to see jubi, which is the crab season, and they now begin to get fat. It's very interesting that the jubi crab season, although they start to be eaten through this period of time and all through summer, the ceremony for the jubi actually occurs later, or the beginning of the year, when they actually start their migration out to deep waters and back into shallower waters to lay eggs. So it's very interesting that the ceremonies for a lot of food are not when the food is actually ready to be eaten, although there are ceremonies at that period of time as well. The food ceremonies are actually in sync when the food is first starting to go on its journey to come back for abundance. So if you can imagine that a ceremony is taking place when jubi, or when crabs first take their big swim out into deep oceans, it's actually a signal to feel gratitude and gratefulness for the abundance that's going to travel back and come into the river systems and ready in time for you to feast upon it. So it's really important to consider when you see Aboriginal ceremonies about food, and certainly in seafood, they follow the patterns of deep ocean and deep waters. So the ceremonial aspects are not only on consumption, they're actually more deliberately in tune with when the food first starts its beginning, its migration. It's to honour the food's life and to understand that the food is going out on its journey to eventually feed you. So it's in that moment of reverence and respect that ceremonies are constructed. So that's very interesting. And I was speaking to a friend from near the Cape communities, and they also, of course, are on the coast and they have a lot of great seafood, etc. And there's ceremonies for food as well, including a turtle, which we kind of share. There's a large ceremony about turtles that happens all the way along the coast, which is actually in tune with the great Eastern Australian Current, or the EAC. So that's the body of water that moves as far as what's actually beyond the Great Barrier Reef, and that comes all the way down to our coastline and then moves across past New Zealand. So that EAC current, which is really large, it's 100 kilometres wide, it's a couple of kilometres deep, and of course Nemo made it very famous because I think the turtles get caught in the stream of the EAC and they're kind of cruising. But that in fact is the time when that current begins to move and merge, that ceremonies have taken place along the coastline in sync with the movements of turtles and other animals. So it's really interesting when you consider ceremony and you consider reverence for food, that you not only honour the food as you're just about to consume it, which of course is very similar to those people that give prayer before a meal, but the ceremony of food in understanding its food system is actually at the beginning of the food system. So in the pre-spring season, which you then start to see jubi, and you start to eat crab, and it becomes abundant all through that season, it's important that you understand that there's actually been a ceremony months earlier, which is actually the beginning of the jubi coming back to you, asking for it to come and replenish you and to fill your belly with good food. My name is Arabella and I'm here with Tales of the Tweed, and I'm really excited to be your host, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions. If you have any, email them into the station. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed Tales of the Tweed, Boogle Bear, and I look forward to speaking to you next Wednesday, 10:30 on 101.3 FM.